What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of A Thinking Man's Podcast. If you're joining us on YouTube, please subscribe to the Muscle Media Network channel. Like the video, leave us a comment, share it with a friend, ring the bell so you're notified every time we post a new video. My man Tommy Styles is churning them out. All sorts of content coming up. As always, this episode is brought to you by Kodiak Bodybuilding Apparel. Train hard, die strong. Thanks to the owner, Chris, for supporting the show, supporting the channel. We appreciate it. And so today, my buddy Tommy and I were doing, Tommy came prepared with some questions. So let's dive right into it. What do you got, buddy?
Start one out since you are in a contest prep. What do you do when you notice strength declining during prep?
Man, and it's interesting too, because I'm in the early stages of it, but I have a handful of guys that are already in various stages of prep right now too, to compete like early spring.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with a guy today who's not all that far along, and he said, training performance is about the same, maybe lost a rep. And I kind of take this from you, like where we talked about it, even like with the cruise mentality. I'm like, dude, just don't let it happen. Like, it's just too early to let this happen. You haven't lost that much body weight. You're still eating plenty of food, gears in, like that front half really of prep, depending on how far out you started and kind of where you are to begin with. But man, really that front half of prep should almost be like an extension of off season where you just get leaner. Now I think maybe the top end loading, like some of like the PR, so to speak, you're going to lose your leverages at a certain point. Like even I'm not much lighter than where I was when I started my prep, but my waist is quite a bit smaller. So I notice on certain things, my leverages are just weird. But what was the exact question? When should we start to change it, or when?
What do you do when you notice strength decline?
It just depends. It depends on how far in. I think if it's, if you're something like, let's say you started earlier, just generally as a recommendation, from like the 16 to 10 week out mark, if at any point you start to notice an exercise declining, I would switch it out and start almost from the ground up on something new, something like a similar pattern. So you're not just ignoring whatever that target body part was. But I would almost like just reset it with a different body part, or maybe if you're hell bent on keeping the same exercise, introduce a new variable that makes it difficult so that you have now a runway to progress and move it up. So if it's a hack squat and you're just going about it with a different tempo and you start to lose a rep or two or something, I would reset the weight and put a pause at the bottom and say, okay, now these are the new parameters, and I'm going to progress this every week. Even if it's a 2.5 on every side, I'm going to progress this every week. Because then you're almost hacking the system and getting back to a place of progress as opposed to regression. Now you've talked about it, and you did a great job of like kind of living it and showing us, leading by example. But if at a certain point, if you're just super dry and super lean, regardless of how many weeks out it is, like the earlier you're ready, the farther out this is going to begin. But at a certain point, the logbook is just going to go out the window. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, you just need to stimulate the muscle. You kind of need to have an understanding of stimulating the muscle without getting hurt, but also it would probably be easy to like bury yourself with some shitty volume, like just doing tons of drop sets and intensifiers, filling the emotional need to feel like you're training hard. I've done that myself. So it depends. There's a couple ways that you could do it, but I liked what you did, where you kind of just found ways to get good workouts in. And kind of emphasize the pump at that point. Like you're trying to hold your performance as long as you can. And I think within a session, you can kind of do both. I think it's probably wise, even as you start to notice that you're super lean, super dry, and your performance is really coming down, it's probably good to have one main exercise that you're still really fighting tooth and nail to hold on to some numbers to. And then from that point forward, you probably just want to work quickly and get good pumps, be accurate with your training, and just do what you can. Do what you can is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I like that you started off talking about like the first thing you need to do is refuse to lose strength, and that if it's far enough out. I mean, same thing. I got guys doing guys and girls doing April and May shows, and the dialogue between us right now is like, hey, you're tacking the sets the same as you did in peak off season. I do not care that the scale's down, that you're leaner. Sure, you're going to lose some leverages. Everybody loses like for me, it's my pressing. That's the first thing to take a hit. I get leaner around my chest and shoulders first. But I think you can extend the point to needing to do anything if you just get pissed off with yourself internally. Throw on your favorite song, call on some rage, and grind out some sets. If that 16 to 20 week out mark, if I hear people talking about losing strength, I think they're mentally weak more than anything. I don't think it's anything to do with the programming or anything to do with a little less food or a little more cardio. I think it's purely mental. They've just met a little bit of resistance and they're not willing to pull through it. So first thing that I would check off is making sure I'm attacking the sets like viciously. And then secondly, I mean, you covered it. It's, don't get married to movements. You don't have to. The logbook is just a tool to ensure you're pushing yourself to still progress in some way or another, but you do not have to get married to the numbers in the logbook. We want progression, not numbers. I'm guilty of that in the past. I got stuck on a movement that I had to see go up, and it was just like, it wasn't going up anymore. So I just needed to sub it out. But I think now having a bit more wisdom and being able to see clients hit certain struggles because they have tunnel vision, I can be an outside set of eyes and say, hey, if you're stuck on the pendulum, stop doing it. Or like you said, reset, pull a plate, start fresh, and then we'll incorporate a 2-count pause in the bottom. So now it's a whole new variable that makes it a whole new, metric to progress with. Those are some of the things I do, but yeah, my prep this year showed me that. And I remember talking with you privately, because there was like 3 weeks where I think I felt some sort of strain or possible tear in a row, adductor, pec, bicep. And I'm not going to make it through this prep. So I tossed the logbook. I trained more instinctually and with a feel. The next prep I do, I'd like to attack it more how we're talking, but that was just what I had to do on the fly with what my body was giving me, because I was super lean 16 weeks out. I think I almost had glutes in by 10 weeks out. So it was just, that was my own situation that I had to adjust with. But ideally, I don't want to have any of my clients that lean and that dry that far out if I can help it. So, I think inside 4 weeks, you should not even focus on any sort of, logbook style. In my opinion, I don't think there's any amount of risk or any amount of reward that's worth the risk of trying to match numbers that you were hitting at the start of prep or in the off season. I think you should go in, train as hard as you can. That might be a time where a reps in reserve approach might have might be something to play. Not something like drastic, but just instinctually leave a rep in the tank on your compound lifts. I started doing that. I was still able to do one all-out set of something per session, but the rest intervals were cut down, and I was just trying to put as much blood as I can without getting hurt.
Yeah, you coined it, and anybody that's like a bodybuilding fan and bodybuilding historian over the different eras of bodybuilding, but you coined it as just training like a California pro from the 90s. Like, those guys did it, and they were able to bring awesome looks to the stage, maybe some of the best ever. So, like you said, I think a big thing is just kind of playing the hand that you're dealt. Like, I remember specifically, I think your pec, the first time at least, popped on you at 12 weeks out. And like, you sent me pictures and I was like, dude, you look like you're 4 weeks out. Like, what's going on here? Like, why are you so dry this far out? Like, this is gonna be tough. But I'm with you. I think, I've personally spoke a lot about like wanting to have guys ready early it instills confidence and all this stuff. But seeing you go through that and just coaching through multiple seasons now and having as many competitors as we've helped, it's good. You live and learn even through other people. So that's one thing that I took from yours too. Like, I shouldn't have anybody at that point where they feel that almost vulnerability in the gym that far out. Like you said, you're 4 weeks out. Yeah, shit's going to be dry and ready to go if you aren't training with your brain at that point. But that should only be that kind of that set period. But yeah, I think that's probably a good way to handle it. A good blueprint.
Right. So kind of a two-parter here. What is your hardest prep to date? And do all preps get easier after you've been truly stage lean?
So they just want to hear like a personal story. And my hardest prep was my second show. It was the first time that I got in real shape. So my first show, I prepped myself and I had no idea what I was doing. I had, I would have periods where I borderline like starve myself and then like refed, and I would like eat like an asshole and rationalized it as bodybuilding dieting. I did no set amount of cardio. I tried to do it all by intuition, and go figure, I showed up not ready. So the second time around, I was like, okay, I'm done fucking around. It was stressful. It was so stressful looking at yourself 40, 50 times a day and trying to make assessments on the fly. It was like so neurotic. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not fucking around. I'm just going to put it in somebody else's hands that knows what they're doing. And I'm just going to be a soldier. And I hired a local guy, but I say that, and take it with a grain of salt, because he was not just your average local guy. This guy was a national champion in like multiple weight classes before they gave pro cards at every class, and had helped hundreds of people. What made it so difficult was, one, the first time really feeling what that feels like to be in shape, but also my life situation. I was in a crazy tumultuous relationship. I commuted 2 hours each way to a job that I hated. And I was working 8 to 10 hours a day each day, so the work day itself was like 14 to 16 hours, give or take. And then it was up to 3 hours a day on the stairs at the end. But it was also like, I look back super fondly on it, because it was like, to be honest, I have thought about it, and they have only gotten easier from that point, at least in terms of my perception of what is difficult. I've never had to do 3 hours of cardio a day since then. I never have felt that hungry. I've never felt that just complete and utter exhaustion of being like ripped and peeled for the first time. And from that point, I promised myself I was never going to be in a situation where I needed to rely on a job that was so crazy, like with the commuting and everything. So, yeah, I mean, I was peeled, and I was lean and mean, 189 pounds on stage at 5'11". But it taught me what I felt like from that point forward. I was like, oh, okay, this is what, if you're going to get on stage, this is what it means. Like, it's, you find a solution and work through everything. There are no excuses, and you just make it happen. If it means that you wake up at 3:30 in the morning so that you can be at the gym when they open at 4, you bring your work clothes, shower after the hour on the stairs, drive the 2 hours, eat all your food, come back, train, do another hour, go back to another hour, and go to bed and do it all over again. Like, that's what you're going to do if that's what your coach says. So I learned like a new level of respect for the game of bodybuilding, and also the people that really live it. And yeah, they have gotten easier. And I think that's a perception thing, one. And then two, I think, just physiologically, it is true that the more muscular you are, the easier it is to look like you're in shape, the easier it is to get in shape. You can eat more food, you can probably do less cardio, all these things. You look better sooner in the prep, the more muscular you are. So, Yeah, I think that idea definitely holds some water. What is your experience, man?
So I mean, it's kind of a tie. My hardest prep as far as X's and O's and just exposure was 2017. I had food focus for weeks, months even. Cardio was the highest I ever did, 95 minutes a day. I was still a firefighter, so that played a role in fatigue as well.
Yeah.
You don't know what your workday looks like. I think I set myself up to have the food focus because I remember Jordan Janowitz and he was prepping for nationals and we both lived in Michigan. We would just send each other food porn on Instagram all day long, dude. Just like Red Robin, sweet potato fries, fucking desserts that I could care less about, but it was just like, you know, dopamine. And then someone else is going through it too. So that one was hard. I mean, I remember like I would just go walk through grocery aisles and look at stuff. I almost like I tortured myself.
Holy shit.
And then, you know, 3 weeks after that show, because I weighed in around 195, I was 215 in the same condition. So I definitely over dieted, took it way too far as like, you know, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I loved it. I loved every
Did you
second.
do it yourself?
No, I worked with a guy.
Okay.
Me, but in knowing what I know now, it's like, you know, people talk about being flat. I was flat. I was over dieted. I was using too much T3.
Yeah.
All
How
the
much?
all
100
I
mics?
got up to like 65 mics, 60 mics.
Okay.
Which, you know,
For you, that's a lot. Yeah.
I don't need T3.
Yeah.
You know, this prep, I literally ran 12.5 the entire prep. So
yeah.
And then the other one will be 2021, just because of I learned a lot about what stress can do to the body. Just once Dusty went into a coma, it was just like I could give a shit about bodybuilding. I was just focused on that. I just had to finish the prep to say I finished it. But
yeah,
I mean, and then that kind of gave me a perspective of no prep will ever be hard to me again, because I was in prep in my peak week and I'm watching this dude on life support, like being, you know, something's breathing for him. So I was like, I'm hungry. That's my hardest thing in life right now.
Yeah.
So it is a perception thing about it getting easier. I think your point too about the more muscular you are, it probably helps it feel easier and you perceive it as easier. I also think too, the more of a year-round bodybuilder you become, to where it's just, I check my boxes no matter what day of the year it is. Prep doesn't really have this like elusive stature, you know. When I started, Dom didn't like give me a, hey, you're starting prep on this day. It was just kind of like I was in it all of a sudden. And I'm sure it was the same for you. Like it's business as usual. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, what my coach tells me. I'm going to check in when he tells me, and that's it. There's no like big parade and big party that they throw when you start a prep. So I think the more you accept that bodybuilding is year round, it's a marathon, you're going to be all right. And, you know, you're going to perceive that what you have to do in prep is just like, that's just a checklist. I'm going to do it.
That is such a good point, because the years that I wasn't as committed in the off season, like looking back compared to what I've been over the last, say, 5 years, let's say the first 5 years of my competing, you know, it was pretty loose off season. I had a pretty loose idea of what an off season was. So to your point, it was like a big, you know, a grand opening first day of prep.
Yeah.
And those were the preps that I perceived as hard. And I almost wonder how much of it, I mean, it definitely was because I was just a loose off-season bodybuilder. So then you're fatter. You didn't get as muscular as you wanted to be. You probably did no cardio. Your training probably wasn't as good as it could or should have been. All of those things. But then also, I wonder how much of it is just like the self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, okay, prep's here. Like it's time to suffer. So yeah, like you said, you know, the past couple of times that I've gone into contest prep, I don't make it a point to compete all the time, because I've just known every year I get off stage how much I needed to compete. But the past few times it has just been like more so gradual changes to the plan to start sliding us towards the end goal, and not like, okay, like grand opening, here it is. Here's 5 days of cardio and a huge calorie reduction. It was just, you know, I'm working with Justin Harris, and this year it was like, okay, like by 24 weeks out, I had gotten pretty heavy and pretty soft. So it was like, okay, let's dial this back a little bit food wise. And then at 20 weeks out, it was like, okay, like we should probably cruise. You're going to have a long year. And so we cruised for 4 weeks. And then at 16 weeks out, it was like, all right, let's put some gear back in and make the diet a little bit harder. So it's just been, it's been pretty gradual, but it's been no different in terms of the process. Like I've trained eating the same foods and done cardio all year. So
yeah, to your point about like kind of being loose, that 2017, which was my hardest prep, I remember the first week I started prep, it was three cardio sessions a week. And I remember looking at that like, all right, it's here, because I hadn't been doing cardio.
Yeah,
so for me to go to the gym and do just the treadmill and maybe some abs, it was like, I'm in prep. But now it's like I've been doing 6 days of cardio a week for over 2 years straight. Like it wouldn't even like cross my mind not to do that, eat prep or no prep.
Yeah,
So
it's almost,
you get
it's
more
almost
mature.
like,
You do the things you know you're supposed to.
it's almost the opposite when it is, when there isn't that like grand opening or huge elaborate change to start, like how it's just kind of just been gradual and you just slide right in. I've mentioned to my girlfriend a couple times, I'm like, I don't even feel like I'm in prep. Like I'm wondering when this is going to feel like it started. Which is funny. It's just a different perspective.
This is, I don't know what they were hoping to get out of this one, or I guess we can just take it whatever way. What is your approach to coaching other bodybuilders while being a bodybuilder?
It depends, just, for a general thing, as a big broad stroked answer, it really depends on that person's psychology and kind of what kind of canvas they're giving you when they start. Is this somebody that has been like hardcore real deal bodybuilding for the past 4 years, and they're coming to you from a coach that maybe like burnt them out on bodybuilding? Well, then you're going to approach that maybe a little bit differently than somebody that like was like us in 2015, where it's like they're pretty loosey goosey and they need the hardcore structure to understand what it's going to take to go to the next level. But for bodybuilders, I'm honestly like, the guys that come to me, they want to bodybuild, they want to compete, and it's not just a lifestyle thing, and it's not, not a knock on these guys, because I'm probably pretty tough on all the classic and men's physique guys too. But being that we are bodybuilders, the guys that come to me, it's just another level up. So it's a little bit more of a tough love approach, because I'm not asking you to do anything that I haven't done and continue to do. So in both fronts, it's like, I have guys that get to 215 for the first time and they tell me that they're struggling with their food or how heavy they feel. And it's like, okay, well, do you want to be 230 or not? Like, I don't really have any patience for that. Like, this is what you want long term, and the food just has to go down. Now, of course, if there is like actual things going on health wise, or where things actually need to change, I'm all ears. And I think my communication is a huge part of what makes me a good coach compared to what the standard is. But it's definitely like a tough love approach, because I'm living it too, and I realize how far away I am from what my goals are. And so then it's like, okay, you guys look up to me and have hired me, and I don't perceive myself as being anywhere close to where I want to be. So that means you're not anywhere close either, and there's just no time for sugarcoating if that's what the goal is. In terms of like the X's and O's and stuff, I mean, I think I've talked about this, but especially for my bodybuilders, I've gotten less afraid of letting guys err on the side of being a little chubby if it means like getting big. Like, it's one thing if you're going to do classic or, men's physique, classic because they have a weight cap or whatever the case is. But it's like, okay, if we're talking like the long-term goal is bodybuilding, you need to just be as big as humanly possible. So if that means you put on an extra 5 pounds, like that doesn't look so pretty, we can pull that off when we need to pull it off. But I'm not, I've been in the situation myself as a client and bodybuilder where I had a coach hold me back because they were afraid to feed me. And I realized looking back that there were gains left on the table because of that. And so I don't want to be in that position as a coach, and I don't want to make someone feel that as a client. So I would rather scoop up and obtain all the human that we can. And, if we got to pull some extra fat off, like, that's part of it. If it means that prep is a little bit harder, so be it. But you're going to be as big and have made as much progress as possible because of it. So that, and with gear, honestly, like I've seen now more and more what's out there. And nobody wants to talk about it. Everyone has their TRT plus spiel and their sales pitch about how, evidence-based, low dose, health conscious is the way to go. That's fine if that's what you want. But like the guys that come to me and they want to be competitive bodybuilders at a very high level, newsflash, guys, like if your health is in order, more is better. Like, I don't know when the sales pitch came that it's not, like, it just is. So, depending on what that person's like prior history is, what their health is, and like how much risk tolerance they have, like, I'm not necessarily afraid to put a protocol in place that's gonna get them to what the desired goal is. Now, I'm never reckless. I think I'm probably more health conscious than most people in our space, but I've gotten less conservative with things when the situation is appropriate. So, and that's with gear. But I honestly, if the guy can afford it, that's mostly with growth. Like the growth is one thing that it's like, man, more is just better. You can afford full, be a lot cooler if you could afford 6.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I honestly, that question kind of confused me, but now the way you answered it, it got me my tires spinning. So I think pairing off some of the things you said, I've learned a bit this year after my prep I'm trying to meet people where they're at in their journeys, not where I'm at in mine. So if I'm working with a first timer, I have to remember, where was I my first prep?
Yeah.
What was my mindset? I was 23. What was my budget before I send someone a list of shit to get? It's like,
Yeah.
dude, yeah. And then sometimes I need to reel them in because there is a ton of information out there and they could have seen that, like, so-and-so says they use this, this, and this. Why aren't we? And it's like, well, how much money do you make a year? And how much money do you have to allocate towards these things? I know what they cost, and I know how much orals cost, and it's a lot of money. Like, and that's why we are always talking about finances when we talk bodybuilding, because you have to be doing everything you can as a bodybuilder, open bodybuilder, classic to a degree. Females pick and choose, but you need to be making money. Your one income might not cut it. You might have to find a side hustle, and that doesn't mean coaching. That can mean anything. I've talked about donating plasma. I've talked about doing a lot of stuff to make sure I can afford the things I want to take and not ever have to tell a coach like, hey, I don't have any money to get that. That's just one part of it. I think within training, I've had to like have conversations with guys about strength, and like the strength will come. There's a lot of times in my career where I've had to reset and pull weight down and check my ego and relearn how to train. Especially chest comes to mind because, man, like I was pushing more weight 2 years ago on every pressing movement that you've seen me post on Instagram, significantly more, and my chest was significantly worse. So the fact that I'm using the weights I'm using now and my chest is like the muscles are showing the loads I can use. Before it was like, yeah, cool. You can press 5 plates aside on the hammer strength incline, but you have no chest. You just have front delts.
Yeah.
Now you see me do 3 plates and it's like, you still don't have a big chest, but you have a little more chest. So I've had to, like, just this week, I had to check 2 of my guys and just say, hey, you need to strip every single movement down to ground zero and start moving forward. And I reminded them that that is a form of progressive overload, is being able to check your ego and start progressing actually in a way where you're progressing as a bodybuilder, not just a weight mover. A lot of it, I think, how I approach coaching bodybuilders comes down to establishing habits and rituals for whatever your situation might be. When I was a firefighter, I had a set of habits and rituals that I had to figure out. No coach told me how to go about, what do you do when you work a 24-hour shift? You eat whenever you can. If you're not on a call or sleeping, you get your meals in some way, somehow. How do I get my cardio in? Well, I know I'm going to be at work for 24 hours. So I'm going to get up 3 hours before my shift and I'm going to go do my cardio and I'm going to come home and shower. And then I'm going to go to work knowing I did my cardio. I think a lot of the information today and of years past recently has started to create this loophole approach of like, well, if you're hungry, you can do this. Well, if you can't do cardio on a machine, you can do this. That wasn't a thing when I started and when you started. No coach gave me alternatives. They just told me what to do. And I found a way to do what they told me what to do. Now, if there is an extreme, like, sure, communicate, we can probably work through it, but just mentioning that you don't want to do the stairs because they're hard, that doesn't cut it. That's not an option. Or, I feel like my blood sugar's low, so I need carbs. Like, no, if I told you there's no carbs in your meal, they're there for a reason. And like you said, I'm not doing anything with anyone that I haven't done. I just talked about knowing that I over dieted in 2017. Looking back, I loved every freaking minute of it, though. I think the biggest thing I think is approaching a body, because like my questionnaire is designed to kind of gauge what kind of person am I dealing with, what kind of psyche do I have. And to your point about letting guys get a little chubby, I'm in agreement with that. At the end of the day, we all need more size. That's always going to be the number one critique on anybody probably listening to this show for the most part. What I try to assess now is, what is the psyche like of this individual? How hard can they diet? Because there's a lot of people who I've started preps with in the past and then realized early that like this person is weak when it comes to dieting, and I'm going to have to adjust how I wanted to diet them to match that weakness. That was my learning curves, because I went into every prep like, I will eat sawdust and walk through fire if it means doing whatever this guy tells me to do. Any coach I've ever worked with, that's my mentality. I know that I could diet as hard as needed from whatever start point. I just have that ability. No matter how hard it got, no matter what I had to do, how little I had to eat, how much cardio I had to do, whatever, I'm capable of that. There are a lot of people who are not. They will find some sort of reason why they're not. Maybe it's kids, maybe it's the job, maybe it's whatever. I mean, I was risking getting fired as a firefighter because I was like barely able to perform the functions of a firefighter down the stretch. But at the time, I didn't care. I did not care. It was just like, I'm committed to this prep. So I think I try to approach, what kind of psyche am I dealing with? And I really learned that when I work with a guy. That's why I like to work with people before preps, so I can develop a rapport. What got you into bodybuilding? What do you know about the sport? What do you know about the history? What do you know about former champions? Do you follow the current guys? What kind of guys do you follow? That tells me a lot. If you're following James Hollingshead and Jordan Peters and some of these guys, a lot of the guys who just bang and love to train, if you follow Branch and that's your people that inspired you to get into it, okay, I know something about you just from that. But if you start telling me like, oh, I really like Frank Zane and Bob Paris, it's like, okay, nothing wrong with it. You prefer something completely different than me, but I can adjust my approach. But I think the psychological aspect is something I've had to continue to hone in. And I also think something I've learned this year is my coaching. It's not that it's different. It's just, I'm a lot more intense when I'm on a prep running drugs versus right now I'm on your grandpa's dose of TRT. So I'm a lot more understanding, and I'll kind of take a minute to think before I respond. Whereas if you give me an excuse when I'm running trainer and prep, it's just like, I don't care, do it, figure it out. I'm doing it. I'm running podcasts and, you know, sleeping very little and doing cardio and getting ready for shows. I'm doing it all. Why can't you? So that's, you know, assessing my own psyche when I, as a coach, depending on my season, is something I've learned about lately too.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's the drugs are definitely part of it, but also I think the big thing is like, man, I just had a full day of solution finding for myself because I'm in contest prep. I just had a whole day of not negotiating or looking for an easy way out. Why am I going to sit here and read about you wanting that when I just didn't do it? I'm with you. I'm looking forward to seeing how I deal with all that at the final stretch here, because it's the thing about it is the clients that I'm most invested in will be the ones that if you surveyed them anonymously would be the ones that tell you that I'm hardest on them. And like you said, I like your point about saying how hard someone can diet will kind of dictate how soft you let them get in the off season. Like if you have someone that is just willing to go to the end of the earth to be in shape and like will starve to be in shape, man, guess what? You get a little bit further runway. And because of that, you might be somebody that puts an additional 3 or 4 pounds of actual muscle on because I let you just keep eating in the off season because I knew you'd get it off. I knew you would do what it takes to get it off. I just pulled this up just before because, like, you know, part of what you had talked about was the cost and all these things, like the cost of orals and all this stuff. I mapped it out before. I was planning on making this a post for Instagram, but for this, if I just condensed my 16 weeks from 16 weeks out until I get to the first show that I'm doing, if I just condensed it to that chunk of time, the cost of everything related to bodybuilding. So I have food, coaching, massage, body work, PEDs, gym memberships, a tan, an NPC card, the hotel, the show entry, all that comes to about $9,000 for 16 weeks. So just something to be aware of if you're listening to this as a competitor or someone that's considered it.
And all your life bills too, or you're doing that.
I didn't even include that. No, I'm talking about just this.
That's what I mean. That's $9,000 of your money going just to bodybuilding. Yeah. You still have rent, utilities, your car, all that shit. That's
all that. I got a dog that needs a new surgery every month. It's great.
Yeah. This is why we're always harping on finances to everybody listening. Same thing with like making sure your stress levels are in order. Yeah. Because this is a lot of money to be putting towards something to not obsess on making sure the rest of your life is in order.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not like a flex. Like I'm just putting it out there. Like that's what I was curious for myself just to put it out there. You know, because I'm eating more than I ever have, and I'm eating more real food. So I'm only eating real food. And, you know, to be honest, I'm taking more drugs than I ever have. So all of those things are variable costs. You know, and then because this is my life, I can afford to do body work once a week, and that's $100 every time I go. And, you know, these different things that, you know, depending on where you are in your journey and what your budget is, it might not cost that much. But it's going to be pretty damn close either way. Like if you're eating real food 6 times a day in contest prep, and you know, you're using some PEDs, you know, you're paying for a decent coach. Yeah, I would say for a 16-week prep with all the shit at the show, tan, all that, be ready to spend $5,000 at least.
Every bit of it. Yeah. This is interesting, I guess, because I know you and I don't view ourselves as like high up on the coaching ladder, but Advice for young coaches, how to improve, what to read or follow. Actually, I think I saw you make a story paralleling this today.
Yeah. What to read or follow, man, that's such a tough one because there is just so much out there.
Be careful.
Be careful because it's not even there's very few things that I think are just black and white, yes or no, right or wrong for coaching and for bodybuilding. I mean, we say it all the time, right? There's no rules. So one thing, if I could like reflect on my own come up in coaching, um, that is outside of the obvious, and some of the things, Tommy, that you may touch on, just a different perspective I've had recently is, in terms of choosing whose information you follow, or who you choose as a mentor, or where you get your information, and what things you choose to parrot, and what philosophies you choose to use. Make sure they align with who you really are as a coach, as a bodybuilder, um, and make sure it aligns with the type of people that you eventually want to help. Because if you come out and, the hot thing right now is evidence-based training, scientific training. And, at this point, it's almost become a saturated market. So it's probably something that might even be more difficult to get clients in and separate yourself doing that. But, just as an example, evidence-based training, scientific bodybuilding, for a while there, that was one of those things that was kind of like a selling point. Like, oh wow, this guy's anti-establishment. He's not following bro science. Like, this is the guy that I want. My point is not that that stuff is right or wrong. There's good information that's out there, and the people that put themselves in that camp or market themselves as that are not good or bad, right or wrong. There's good coaches across all fronts. But the big thing that I would say is make sure that the people that flock to that are the type of people that you want to help. So, for my example, or just for me personally, that was kind of part of my selling point when I started, was that I was thinking about things from a more evidence-based scientific approach. And more, I would see that the people that were coming to me and calling that out as a reason for being interested in my coaching, to put it bluntly, were not people that I wanted to help or wanted to work with. And that was a result of me kind of putting other people's ideas at the forefront of my marketing, as opposed to my ideas and the things that I believe in and the things that I have done to build my physique. So I would just stay true to yourself. If I had to summarize that little rant, I would stay true to yourself. And like you had talked about before, Tommy, like, who do you follow in bodybuilding? Who inspires you? What made you get into bodybuilding? Who were the first guys that you looked up to and were impressed with in bodybuilding? Those are the people that I would continue to invest my time and look into their methods, because success leaves clues. And there's a reason that those guys were impressive to you in the beginning. And it wasn't because of, the newest research and clinical trials. It was because of real life application and real life results. There's a lot of shit in bodybuilding that all of this evidence-based research will never uncover, will never come up with an answer for, and will never prove or disprove. Like, this shit doesn't happen in a textbook. It doesn't happen in a spreadsheet. Bodybuilding is happening in real life, here and now. We're doing things that we're 100 years away from getting any type of scientific confirmation about, or if at all. I don't know that there's ever going to be a clinically funded study that follows around 30 juiced up gearheads that eat meat and rice 6 times a day. I just don't think we're ever going to see it. So if that's you, To put it simply, I would take information from people that have either done what you want to do or have helped people do what you want to do. So, you're getting information from somebody and they're not impressive looking and they've never helped anybody get really impressive looking. I just wouldn't take advice from them. And I think that holds true in every walk of life. Like I say this all the time, but it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me, like in other fields, like if you've never hit a golf ball 400 yards and that's what you want to do, you're going to hire somebody that has done that or helped other people do that. If you can't throw 95, you're not going to hire someone that topped out at 82 and never helped anybody get to 95. Like and then in finances, like finances are the most blatant one because we all deal with money and have to manage our finances. You would never take financial advice from someone that you saw on the street and they were dead broke. So in bodybuilding, why are you going to take advice? Like if you want to be a bodybuilder, open bodybuilding, and you want to be massive, how are you going to hire or take advice or information from someone that's 185 pounds soaking wet and they're citing biomechanics and evidence-based research? So they haven't done it themselves. Now, if they've helped tons of people, Blue Taylor likes to talk about it. What's the resume?
Check your resume.
You don't always, it doesn't always have to be someone that's walked the walk themselves. You get somebody like Chris Aceto, Blue Taylor, some of these other guys, whoever. There are plenty of coaches that were never 300-pound open bodybuilders, but they've helped 20 of them. They've helped 50 of them. They've created guys that were middleweights and are now heavyweights or super heavyweights. It should be one of the two. I think one of the two criteria, long story short, should be, have they done this? Have they done what you want to do? Or have they helped people do what you want to do?
Another example of like I think I made a reel about this, or I've said it on a previous episode, is I wouldn't take my car to a mechanic who's never worked on cars, but there's a guy there that read a lot of books and watched a lot of videos about working on cars. Experience is a factor that has to be, accounted for. I think I gotta look at the original question. How to improve is just something I try to do is just never let any wins I get as a coach go to my head. I always want to be hungry to do better. I meet the client where they meet me. If they're giving me 70%, they get 70% of me. I think when I was a younger coming into it, being a coach now for 5 years, I wanted everyone that worked with me to like kill it and be successful. And it was just like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I'm not with these people 24 hours a day. I don't know what their habits and rituals are like. I can inspire that, but I can't enforce it. As a younger coach,
yeah, I just ran on a rant with this, but there's obvious X's and O's, like, these are the things that can help your business. But I think that's just such a big one. Like I get people that send me messages and they're like, as a younger coach, like, how do I go about helping clients? And it's like, well, do you want to work with bodybuilders or do you want to work with 60 soccer moms that just need to lose weight for the vacation? Like, you better market yourself accordingly.
This is where the disconnect I didn't get into bodybuilding to be a coach. I got into bodybuilding to be a bodybuilder. And then throughout my life, there was enough people who had, even before bodybuilding, I was the guy that led workouts. I was the guy that wrote training plans for random people because I knew that information, or I knew exercises, I knew body parts. I was the only guy reading Flex Magazine and Muscle Mag of any of the people I knew. So I was the deferred one that like had the knowledge when I really didn't know much. I just knew a little bit more than everybody else. So the coaching kind of just happened. It wasn't ever something I aspired to do, where now we're talking about how to, as a younger coach, what to do. And there's podcasts talking about how to become a coach. There's curriculums you can buy online of how to become a coach. It's like, it's almost like people, that want to be YouTubers, like, oh, I want to be a coach. And it's like, do you know what goes into coaching? Like, there are multiple days where I do not go outside for 12 hours straight because I'm not hunched over on a laptop.
Yeah.
If you want to coach bodybuilders, when their peak week is there, your entire week is wrapped up in them. That's just one. If you have multiple clients, I mean, I think I had 4 do a show, or I had a 4 on a show, same day show in different time zones. That was like 19 hours of just being glued to my phone, messaging, voice memos. Also while being a bodybuilder myself. So you have to think about what you're saying you want to do. You shouldn't become a coach, or you shouldn't want to be a coach just to make some extra money. You can, but at the same, like, I guess it just depends on what your idea of coaching is. Like, once I decided I was going all in on coaching, and like I was going to brand it, and that was what I was going to do. It's my life. Coaching takes up my life. It is on my mind all the time. Even if I've answered a client in their prep, some of these guys that I've been working with for over a year plus now, some over 2 years, I'm thinking about their prep even outside of our little communication via WhatsApp and on Loom and stuff. I'm like, man, I wonder what's going to happen in 2 weeks. I'm thinking about 2 weeks ahead, his next check-in, 4 weeks ahead. What am I going to do if he's ahead? Am I going to pull, like, you know what I mean? Kind of like conversations we've been having. Like, that's the type of stuff you have to be ready for if you want to excel as a coach. Who to learn from, I think, that's the trickiest one, because I even, there's a lot of, and this could go for you as a bodybuilder and a coach. A lot of times you could start learning from someone or something simply because at that point in your journey, it speaks to what you want to hear. So you ipso facto become a follower of that. If you were someone who came out of a horrible prep that had no knowledge or logic behind any of the moves, and you felt your coach wasn't paying attention, you might be drawn to the evidence-based coach who does spreadsheets and all sorts of neurotic things. That might be good for you. But I found that, like, I think it's called, is it confirmation bias? You're just finding someone who will confirm where you're at.
Yep.
So,
and you may outgrow those situations. You know what I mean? Like, if you're anything like the two of us, right, Tommy, like, you come across different people that in different parts of your journey you learn from, and take a piece here, take a piece there. Like, by the time you're 10 plus years into bodybuilding and 5 years into coaching, you're a little piece of all the people that you've run into and that they've impressed something on you. And that's even just for your own bodybuilding in general. It's, I like the way James trains, but I like the way that Jay ate, like all these different things. Like, it's the same thing with coaching. Like, you might love what one guy did for your peak week versus how another coach did your off season versus how another coach did PEDs, but this guy's insulin protocol liked minus this little part. So it's, the experience is just the big thing. I think, not to beat a dead horse, but I think in terms of like being a young coach, or like you said, for us, it just almost happened organically, like almost, I don't want to use this word, but almost by mistake. Like, that was not the plan at all. So, that's all we know, is that we tried to advance ourselves as bodybuilders and realize that coaching worked for us. So I would make it a point to try to advance yourself first and foremost. Like, you are a walking billboard if you're a bodybuilder / coach. Who you get to believe in you, and who you get to trust your opinion, especially, before you've had a stable of clients to post and promote, is largely going to be based on you and how you look and what you're able to showcase as results, and then, how you're able to market yourself and talk about it. So I would just make it a point to continue to advance and learn yourself, and just walk the walk is the big thing. Like, you can't expect people to take your opinion and trust you. Like, you can't expect someone that's a full-time bodybuilder and they want to take it as far as they can, and they're going to come along and trust you as someone that has 1 foot in and 1 foot out half of the year. That's just never going to work.
That, and I think one thing that no one talks about, that is personal to me, but it's just something I've learned, like, as a coach in the physique space, whether that's competitions for bodybuilders or lifestyle clients, you have to have leadership qualities and capabilities. If you are not a leader, you cannot be a coach or successful one, in my opinion. You can know all of the knowledge you want and take all the courses, read all the books, take all the classes that other coaches are selling, and you should take those. I do, you do. Like, there's ways to enhance your skill set and learn. But if that's all you can do, and you aren't a natural leader in situations that are psychologically require you to be the leader and the client to be someone that's going to follow what the leader says, you will not make it. I mean, and bodybuilding is something where you and I both coach guys that are years older than us with kids and families and way more responsibilities in certain aspects of life than you and I have, but they defer to us to lead them on their bodybuilding journeys. You have to be prepared to be the one that's calm. You ever, how much are you going to trust your leader or your coach if you take them something and they panic or they're stressed and they don't they freak out and they, you're not going to be calm because your leader is not calm. So leadership is something that I coaches all the way back to 13 years old playing baseball that had changed the trajectory of my life because of how they coached me. That's the type of impact I want to leave, competitor or not, is like, I want to change people's outlook and trajectory of the life they're going to go, whether they stay with me for 3 months, 3 years, however long it works out. But you have to have the natural innate ability to lead.
I don't know that I could add anything better than that. I think that's probably the single most important thing since you verbalized it. I wouldn't have thought to say that just while we're sitting here on the fly talking about it, but that's the single most important thing. I would say that, and then you have to enjoy teaching.
Yeah.
That's what it is. You're a teacher. So you have to enjoy it and you have to be good at it. So part of that is communicating and part of that is patience. But I think the biggest one, to not take this any further, because I'm not really gonna add to it, is leadership.
That's one of the intangibles, the X factors. So this one's this one's kind of dark, so we can close with this one. Obviously, over the years, you and I have seen bodybuilders pass away.
Yeah.
Different reasons.
Yeah.
I'm obviously very vocal about death and my views of it, and I think about it daily almost. But do your bodybuilding choices in turn make you think about an early death?
It's weird because I almost never do, but before this recording, I went and got body work done, and then on the drive back, for some reason, I was thinking all about this. So it's kind of a bizarre timing that you just dropped, because I didn't know these questions coming into this. So you just dropping this on me is pretty bizarre. As a general thing, not really. I don't really think much about it. I think about it I think about death in terms of losing people that I care about, losing other people, and what their death would mean to me. But I don't really ever think about it in terms of myself, and definitely not in terms of like what bodybuilding does to that for me. I honestly, when I think about it, I think that I just there's a date somewhere down the line where this current physical body of mine expires, and that's just the end of it. I think that there are tons and tons of paths and choices that I could have made that would have done that date much worse than what I did with this. And it's corny, but I think about that quote, like 30 years a lion or whatever it is. bodybuilding and all of the choices that I made to prioritize being the best bodybuilder that I could possibly be has given me everything that I have. And it's given me a life that I am proud of and I enjoy on a day-to-day basis. And it's all because of bodybuilding. Everything around, I look around the house, I go to the gym, I sit on the computer and talk to my clients and my friends like you, and everything, every part of my day has come as a result of the choices that I've made as a bodybuilder. So when that expires, then so be it. I don't think that I'm really doing my long-term health as wild of a disservice as the mainstream would make you believe. And also, I know that my competitive bodybuilding is a short part of my journey in the big picture. Like, it's gonna end at some point, and then when it does, I will probably not scramble, but I will make a hard turn and do everything I can then to preserve that next chapter of my life in terms of my health. So if it's, if I'm walking around at 300 and it means I need to downsize, well, then I'll do so rapidly with the same obsessive intention that I approach bodybuilding with. So I just feel like all of that is in my hands, and bodybuilding will probably go on for another 10 years for me, and from that point I'll make choices that reflect the next part of my life. But as far as like, do I think about it on a daily basis? I don't.
Yeah, I mean, and to answer that one, I don't think about bodybuilding being the reason I die early. I've thought about it, dying young from a young age, but never because of bodybuilding. Same thing as you, bodybuilding. My obsession for bodybuilding since I was 17 and then starting competitively at 23 has given me every single thing I have in my life. I would not have near the income I have if it wasn't for my pursuit of bodybuilding that led me to coaching. I'd still be a firefighter. And I hated firefighting for the most part. There was a few gleaning moments where it was like, okay, that was kind of cool. I got a little bit of fulfillment out of it. But for the most part, I hated my time as a firefighter. And that's what I went to school for.
I've hated everything I've done other than coaching, and anything I could have done.
Yeah. No, I think, like you said, coaching fell on both of us kind of like not, it just was kind of accidental. It wasn't supposed to happen, but
accidental.
It did.
Yeah.
It was an opportunity that we both ran with. So I will always be someone, and somebody can take this receipt. And if I ever slip up, feel free to screenshot this, call me out. I don't care. Like, I will always speak positively of bodybuilding. I will never let myself get to be some of the guys we know that are older who are done and their bodybuilding has passed them and they speak poorly of it and some of the choices. I will never talk badly about it because it gave me the life that I have, and I appreciate so much that it has given me. So even if death did come because of bodybuilding, it's not like I'm going to know. It's not like I'm going to die and someone's gonna be like, hey, you died because you were a bodybuilder and did these things. There's no fucking like an audit that you get at the end of life. So it's like, I'm doing whatever I want to do right now. That's the most important thing to me, is to do whatever you want in life. So with that, I want to know, is chasing greatness in yourself, is that an addiction?
A healthy one.
I agree. I mean, anything that you think about every waking moment and that you're always pursuing it, it has to be labeled as an addiction.
I think greatness and progress, if I had to choose another word to define it, because I just always need to move forward and I'm just not doing things. Like, the worst parts of my life, when I think back in terms of my mental health or anything, have been times where I felt stagnant.
Yep, I agree. Anytime I was not aggressively pursuing something is when if we want to talk mental health, that's when my mental health was the worst. And I would have probably labeled myself as depressed, was during instances where I was just kind of like passing time.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing I learned from Dusty's coma, and then also his continuous reflection on his coma, is time waits for no man. Like, get busy living or get busy dying. That's a Shawshank
Fucking
quote.
right. Hell yeah.
So that's, I kind of like, there are so many people probably listening to this, or they know people that fall into this, that like they've thought about trying something for years and they haven't done it. And it's like, the worst that could happen is you try it, you don't like it. Even if you tried and failed, that doesn't mean it wasn't worth trying. You just try again or decide not to try again. But like, you'd rather, I think the fear of rejection is one to conquer over the fear of regret, because regret, once you're at the stage of regret, there's no going back. There's no
Regret's a
wishing.
motherfucker, dude. There's like a David Goggins quote that just brings me to like goosebumps and like a shaky, weird emotional state when I hear him talk about it, where he talks about like, if there is a God and there is a heaven, and he died, let's say he never made the changes that he did in life, and he just stayed fat, sprayed cockroaches, and then he died and goes up to heaven, and there's a chart and it says David Goggins, right? And it says Navy SEAL, bachelor's degree, master's degree, all these records, all these military awards, Army Ranger, all these things, 185-pound jack specimen. And he looks at the chart and says, God, like, this says my name, but that's not me. I'm 300 pounds. I worked at Ecolab. I didn't do anything. I didn't do any of these things. And God looks back at him and says, this is who you were supposed to be.
Yeah. I've heard that one. I think, was that on Rogan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said it a couple times, but I have it saved as like an audio that I listened to before, like I was listening it the other day during legs. And it's just, man, it's just, that's a big one. It's just, who are you supposed to be? Are you meant for more than what you're doing? And there's been times in my life where I ask myself that, and I can honestly say I'm meant for more than whatever this bullshit I'm doing right now is. I need to get after it.
Absolutely. I had that feeling the entire time I was a firefighter. I just could not imagine, year after year passing and like, I'm still Tommy Styles, the firefighter. And like that a thought like that or anything similar it's a seed and it will grow into a fucking cancer. And I truly believe, I don't care about science on this one, like that thoughts like that you let live in you will cause an early death or some bullshit sickness. Like, you're more susceptible to catch something or to deal with ailments and illnesses that you wouldn't have had you just decided that you're going to do what you want to do.
And that's with anything. I think too, like when I hear all that, I think of like two big things. I think of like jobs, and I think of relationships, because there's people that stick around in shitty ass jobs because they're afraid of trying anything else, and they stick and settle for shitty ass relationships and shitty people just because they don't want to be alone or they don't want to go fail on their own. And like you said, anyone that's listening to this that's in either of these situations is going to know exactly what I'm talking about. There's like an ongoing bell that just sits in the back of your head and rings and rings and rings. And you lay there at night and you can't sleep. You're stressed all the time. You're anxious all the time. And it's because you're not fulfilling what you could have fulfilled. And you know it. I've been in those situations, and you just lay there and you're like, man, this is fucked up. I'm meant for so much more than this. And I know it. I need to get moving.
Yeah. So on that note, I think we get moving if you're not moving.
Get busy living. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Leave us a comment if any of that resonated with you. For Tommy Styles, I'm Joseph PIRCHER. This was a Thinking Man's podcast. Until next time, we are out.